Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sharon Bonney. I'm the Executive Director for the Coalition on Adult Basic Education, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Integrated Education and Training, a service model for adult education across the spectrum. First, I'd just like to mention and cover this quickly that all webinar participants will receive a certificate of attendance. This can be used for CEU verifications, and it will be sent to you tomorrow over email by 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Additionally, all materials will be shared that are shared during this webinar will also be shared on the website. So just rest assured that all the great information that's going to be covered today will be archived and available for you for later updates and downloads. Okay, and all of the materials that we share are uploaded to our Adult Educators repository, which is located there. There's the web link. I'll also put it in the chat box. We mention this because the Adult Educators repository is a great resource. It's free of charge to members, and we just want to make sure that everybody is aware that these resources are there for future use. We have a really exciting event coming up, our 2017 virtual conference, October 25th and 26th. We have over 20 national partners that are helping us with this. It'll be excellent professional development. We've had over 14 states sign on. So what happens is state associations who we partner with sign on all of the members of their state to participate and to be able to attend this free of charge, or individuals can attend for $25 per day. So just want to mention that the virtual conference registration has launched. If your state association has not purchased registration, you can purchase registration for just $25 and attend that professional development activity. Next, our Educate and Elevate, Adult Education and Investment in America's Future. This national public awareness campaign has kicked off. We've had great success. We've had many states adopt this, and we're excited to share that our goal is not only to ensure that our funding stays the same, but actually to increase it to the authorized level. So there's a lot of great tools and resources available at educateandelevate.org. Also, you can access the same information at educateandelevate.info. But there's a lot of excellent and free resources for our members, and we encourage you to go there to that site. The one other thing I want to mention is that through this Educate and Elevate campaign, we've had over 15,000 contacts with legislators since February 1st. So there's a great tool on the Educate and Elevate site where you can very quickly click, contact your legislator, and let them know that adult education is important and that it matters. And we hope that you'll take that action today. Okay, I would also like to mention that the COAB Journal is celebrating 40 years of publishing. The journal serves the needs of the adult education field and enables the field to share research and best practices. In our winter issue, Michelle and William wrote an article on using research to design integrated education and training programs. I mention this because the journal is free of charge if you're looking at the electronic version. And so all members can go to coab.org, click on journal, and find an article that's relevant to the topic that we're discussing today, integrated education. Now, I would like to mention and introduce our wonderful presenter, Judy Mortrude. Many of you know Judy Mortrude. She has served in the past as not only a keynote speaker for our last virtual conference, she's also conducted one of the most popular webinars we've ever had, when we had nearly 1,000 people attend, and that was last year. It had to do with workforce development. But additionally, Judy works for CLASP, and she has over 30 years of experience in developing, delivering, and evaluating workforce education, particularly with low literacy and high barrier populations. She's been a classroom teacher, a school administrator, and a state agency staff, and now supports cross-agency teams in a variety of states as they scale and sustain integrated education and training career pathways, policies, and practices. So we're going to hear from Judy in just a few minutes. Before we do that, I just would like to mention that this webinar is sponsored by Burlington English. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robert Breitbart of Burlington English, because without Burlington English's generous sponsorship, we would not be able to have this webinar. So Robert, thank you so much for sponsoring this webinar.
Well, thank you, and to thank you for everyone out there who has taken the time to join us here. I can't wait for Judy's presentation. It really is going to be extra special. I've really enjoyed Judy's work in the past, and I know this one is going to be exactly the same. What I'd like to share with you definitely is Burlington's unique blend of, as PowerPoint always seems to jump in here, Burlington's unique blend of not just general English, but EL Civics integration for IELCE. And as you're listening, Judy, stay tuned, because I'll be back and share even more about our specifically created for ESL learners, are very unique. The only place you can get something like this are Career Pathways, that provides a simulated career counselor and experience for every one of your learners, and creates actually a digital portfolio for them to work in preparation for the integration of education and training. And again, Burlington is the only place that you'll find specifically designed for ESL learners the type of career-specific exploration that leads them to not just making a great IET choice, but also leads them through the kind of content and vocabulary that they would need for success in a specific career. And if you see the dental hygienist here, that's a little tease for something you'll see in just a little bit. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it back over to Sharon and to Judy for this great webinar. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Robert. So just a couple things. First of all, I want to mention that we had 672 people register for this webinar. We have a little over, well, we have almost 400 people on. We would love for everybody to put your name and where you're joining us from in the chat box. And we would also like to just take this time right now to welcome Judy Mortrude. She is our presenter of the day, who will be presenting on this topic. So Judy, thank you, welcome, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Robert. Hello, everybody. Please do find that chat box and introduce yourself, share where you're from. As Sharon pointed out, I have been in adult education for a very long time, and in those more than 30 years, and in those different positions as a teacher of ESL and GED and family literacy, curriculum writer, software editor, administrator, state staffer, in all of those positions, I have been working toward the topic that we're going to discuss today, IET. Currently, I'm a senior policy analyst at CLASP, and CLASP is a national nonprofit that advocates for policies and practices that benefit low-income people. You may have heard of CLASP's work in a lot of different areas. We do things in childcare, immigration, job quality, income supports, and I'm on the team that focuses on education and workforce development. And I'm going to start us off today with some context, a look at where we've been, where we are now in the world of adult education and workforce development. We'll review some language from the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA. This, as I'm sure you all know, is the federal law that includes the Adult Education and Family Literacy Act as WIOA Title II, and makes adult education part of a state and a local regional strategy for individual prosperity and community economic development with its other core WIOA programs. I'm going to present some IET models from my home state of Minnesota that span the spectrum of adult education, from the lowest educational functioning levels up to integrated instruction in college courses. And we'll consider how IET fits inside WIOA's requirements and reporting. And then I'll leave you with a few resources to explore. So please do put questions into the question box. We'll get to those at the end of the session, and any we don't get to, I promise I will send you an email response. So how we got here. The federal investment in adult education began in 1966 with the Adult Ed Act, part of the War on Poverty. In the 80s, there was a real academic and research focus on adult literacy that began, including the foundational adult learning theory from Knowles in 84. and the work of Thomas Stitch in 1987 on what he called functional context education. Stitch has been a hero of mine in the adult education space ever since I heard him speak in the 80s. In testimony here in DC, back then, he said, quote, "There is a real opportunity where we could mix basic skills and content area teaching. We could be teaching literacy skills within the context of natural sciences, life sciences, but we don't do that because there's this myth that says literacy is something you get first and then you have to apply. And of course, that's totally wrong. You get it while you apply it." So that was Thomas's quote way back when. And he was very persuasive because in 1988, Congress invested in adult education through the National Workforce Literacy Program, $120 million from 88 to 94, related directly to the improvement of literacy needs in the workplace. And then all know that in 91, we got the National Literacy Act. George H.W. Bush, along with his wife Barbara Bush, both big advocates of literacy, he signed the National Literacy Act, saying that this legislation represents another significant step toward implementing our America 2000 strategy. So we were preparing for Y2K at that point. In 1998, we got the Workforce Investment Act, or WIOA, which many of you probably worked under. WIOA brought us adult education inside Title II of WIOA. And it was really about the creation of the one-stop system, bringing adult education into alignment with other local partners. And during the 15 whole years that adult education operated under WIOA, there was a great deal of innovation. You all out there were doing a lot of things. And even while we didn't have a new law during all that time, the Federal Department of Education did really recognize that innovation in many ways. And in one way was the 2010 guidance from the Department of Education, from Assistant Secretary then Brenda Dan Messier, herself a longtime adult educator, who wrote about career pathway models gaining widespread recognition by those using adult education services to prepare adults for success in post-secondary education and work. Talked about IET, combining occupational skills and training with adult education services to really increase the education and career advancement of participants. And then, as you know, in 2014, we got WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and we got, for the first time, the definition of IET in federal law. And then since 2014, we've gotten the WIOA regulations and the updated National Reporting System guidance. And this is really the first time we're operating in adult education with regulation, with federal regulation. So again, way back in '84, my first year in adult education, Malcolm Knowles introduced these 4 principles of adult learning, which really still holds true in my mind. Adults need to be involved in the planning and evaluating of their learning. Adult learning needs to build on the experiences, including prior knowledge and prior mistakes in our lives. For adult learning to be effective, it needs to be immediately relevant and have an impact in an adult's life. And adult learning is problem-centered rather than content-oriented. And I really believe that's the basis for quality adult education. The mission of adult education, I did that timeline because I wanted to say the mission has remained the same. It's always been about supporting adults to a level of self-sufficiency for themselves and for their families. But that target has changed since when we began. Back in '66, that was reading to the 8th grade level. And over time, that became completion of a high school diploma or equivalency. But now, in our new economy, that is educating beyond the high school diploma to post-secondary education. Anthony Carnevale, you may know his name. He was, has famously said 70% of all jobs by 2018. And guess what? We're there. We'll require some form of post-secondary credential. He continues to produce some really compelling data, including this sort of amazing statistic up on the screen in front of you, which makes a really compelling argument for the impact of low educational attainment on an individual. This, of course, doesn't mean that there aren't lots of low skill, low pay, low quality jobs in the United States. It just means that the new jobs being created since the recession aren't going to people with low educational attainment. There's also plenty of evidence about the impact of low skills on the economic health of communities. I would encourage you to go take a look at this new report out of the Brookings Institution called Meet the Out of Work, which profiles jobless adults ages 25 through 64 in 130 cities, large cities and counties across the United States. And it also documents research strategies to connect individuals to employment. This analysis aims to really deepen the understanding of out-of-work Americans and support local practitioners in their efforts to help these individuals re-engage. So in these 130 communities across the US, there are 11.3 million people who are unemployed. Brookings, the report then disaggregates this population, analyzes them by a number of characteristics, including age, educational attainment, race, few other descriptors, including limited English proficiency or having a disability. The lion's share of that 11 million people are represented in those colored lines up above. Dark blue is less educated younger people, and the other blue is less educated prime age people. These populations should feel very familiar to adult educators. And they have some other profiles, then they really do break this down into sort of individuals. So a man without a 51-year-old man with a high school diploma worked in construction, lost his job when the economy slowed. A single mother who didn't finish high school. Her children are now school age. She's looking for work outside the home. A man with a high school diploma worked in warehouse packaging, lost his job, stopped looking, really is just dropped out of the labor market. 40-year-old mother of 3 teenage children, never completed high school, is a Spanish speaker natively, looking for work now to really support her family. So these are very definitely adult education populations. The report also details evidence-based intervention strategies for these target populations. And if you look at this website and click on these different buckets, these 8 different strategies, you'll find research and evidence of effectiveness for this type of service design. So things like bridge programs, sector initiatives, 2-gen programs, apprenticeships, these are all areas where integrated education and training models can be the core instructional delivery model. They can really be what adult education takes on in the model. So let's take a look at IET in legislation. And I imagine most of you have seen this if you work under WIOA Title II. Adult integrated education has been defined as these 3 components: adult ed, workforce preparation, workforce training, for the purpose of educational and career advancement. So looking at those 3 components just a little bit more deeply, this one should feel very familiar again. And you know, when we went from WIA to WIOA, the definition for what adult educational literacy is was added to. Nothing was deleted, but we did get letter F, letter G, letter H here, with the integrated EL civics becoming part of WIOA, with workforce preparation and IET being added to the components of adult ed and literacy. And we got a definition of workforce preparation. So again, these should feel like very familiar kinds of things you do in your classroom. Not only basic academic skills, but critical thinking, digital literacy, self-management, understanding systems, working with others, right? These kind of success skills that we build into our programs come under this heading of workforce preparation. And then the third component of IET is workforce training. And again, this is a definition that exists in WIOA. You can even see down there on letter number 10 that adult ed is considered a workforce training strategy if it is done in concert with some of the other kinds of training that's included here, like occupational skill training, on-the-job training, incumbent worker training. So these 3 components, adult ed, workforce prep, workforce training. They are integrated education and training, and WIOA regulations flesh out these definitions by defining that IET is a strategy that happens contextually and concurrently, that education is happening contextually and concurrently with the workforce preparation and workforce training, and that the three components need to be proportionately balanced, and that the provider, the teachers, must have an integrated set of outcomes. So you see my little graphic I made up there at the top right. This is adult education in red, workforce training in blue, workforce prep in yellow. And I'm going to try to use that little meme across a number of different examples here. So this is an example of bridge programming. Bridge is a popular term for a type of adult education course that includes industry recognized credentials. In this particular bridge course, the adult education instructor had a commercial driver's license himself, had a background in driver's education and truck driving. So he delivered this course, this one course, with an integrated set of outcomes. And so I use this graphic to just show how you can think about these three core components. The adult education happening up here in red, which could include and does include ELL, includes high school preparation for people who need that, and it includes math, reading, writing, all focused on this use of the transportation field. In the workforce preparation in yellow, definitely digital literacy skills, employability skills, communication skills, interviewing, and in blue, that commercial driver's license with all kinds of endorsements for transporting passengers, and school bus endorsements, and air brakes, and all these kinds of certifications that the industry requires. You'll also see I've included a link here to a set of lesson plans from Women Employed. Their career pathway network has got some really excellent, and I'll show you more of this when we get to the resource page. Another setting for IET is workplace learning. Again, this kind of harkens back to the 80s and the Workplace Literacy Project, and a time in my career when workforce shortages were common, as we're seeing again today. And the face of workers was really changing because of a lot of immigration in our community. And we had a lot of workplace literacy then. One of the places that was familiar for this kind of work was in a food processing plant. GNP is a food processing plant, often a first job for new arrivals in our communities. And many of you probably have had ESL type courses for frontline workers. And you can see how that kind of programming fits into the IET model. It's got that English language learning, it's got the communication skills, teamwork skills, digital literacy, and some very specific skills for that particular job. Now, through the work of that career pathway thinking, all that work we were doing under WIA, the pathway at GNP Industries has grown to also include the IET and IET program with a local community college, who is now providing instruction for a 16-credit production technician certification program to continue the pathway, to continue the career opportunities for those frontline workers. Another setting for IET is in apprenticeship or in the pre-apprenticeship space, as in this construction training course. Again, these might be familiar type courses that you see in your community, often done with a variety of partners. In this case, the adult education program provides the reading, math, problem solving inside the construction context, as you see here in red. One CBO provides the workforce prep skills, another CBO provides financial literacy services, and a construction trainer provides the occupational training, resulting in, again, these multiple certifications. IET can become a service model that you offer really throughout your programming. In this example, the International Institute of Minnesota, which has been around for many, many years, serving new arrivals in the community, has a very well-established healthcare pathway that includes everything from pre-certified nursing assistant kind of bridge programming to medical career advancement. The chart on this slide over there on the top right compares the achievement of students in the adult career pathway program called Minnesota Fast Track in that IET program with the other college students with really remarkable results. 74% of the adult students receiving an IET, the IET service achieved an A in the course. And that blurb under the chart explains how a bridge course really prepared those students for the anatomy and physiology course, and how the anatomy and physiology course included both instructional support classes outside of the CTE course and also in-class supports. So this is how that anatomy and physiology course fits the IET model. As Sharon pointed out, this kind of model really mirrors the piece in the COABE journal that using research to design IET programs, which really details the sort of why and how of Northampton Community College, starting a variety of IET programs for their students. So I really encourage you to go take a look at that COABE research to practice issue. The setting where many of you, most states are getting really serious about IET right now is in the IEL Civics program. This used to be a standalone grant program, standalone fund, but it's now rolled into WIOA, and IET is a mandated part of this fund use, and this is the purpose of integrated EL Civics. And again, I'm going to go back to the International Institute of Minnesota. As I said, they had this long-standing health career pathway. In fact, they've had that health career pathway around for so long that the nursing instructor at their partnering community college once upon a time was in their pre-CNA class. So that tells you how long they've been operating that pathway. But recently, the director of that school was looking for a solution for a new population, a low literate Somali refugees who really needed employment, they needed benefits. So she started this housekeeping partnership with several large hotel chains in the community. And in fact, she was even able to negotiate job quality factors for the students, getting all three of these hotel chains to use the same entry wage when they were hiring people. So you can look at this truly a pathway construction here with, in orange, the IET courses that are offered along the way. The first being a very beginning English language level 6-week training. That 100-hour class provides prospective hotel housekeepers, customer service, industry-specific English, housekeeping skills, soft skills. And then when people are hired, there is another opportunity to come back after a while and take a housekeeping supervisor training, which then helps the experienced working housekeepers gain the skills to move into supervisory or training positions. And beyond that, there is a hotel management bridge and support class, a 3-week bridge class with ongoing support during the first college semester for clients who want to pursue this degree in hospitality management at a local community college. So this was IET with a population of students with really incredible needs. While not a high wage job, you are seeing some signs of wage progression. And these were for students who 82% had not been working, had no individual income. For around half, this was their first job in the United States. A third were single parents of young children. Nearly 20% were homeless or at immediate risk of homelessness. And under advancing careers here, you can see that really this is doing what we want IET to do. It is helping people get on a pathway to advance both in career and in continuing education. So clearly these multiple programs obviously fit the IET model. Another requirement that is clearly spelled out in WIOA regulation is that IET be part of a career pathway program. And boy, during those 15 years of WIOA, we worked really hard, all of us around the country, trying to develop what career pathway programs look like for individuals with barriers. And WIOA gives us a really excellent definition. It is a combination of rigorous, high-quality education training and other services. And I've highlighted here D and E. D really reads almost word for word the definition of IET, right? Education concurrently with, in the same context as, workforce prep and training. Part E, I always like to point this out to educators, especially educators who are sitting on local workforce boards, because it has this word accelerate in it, organized for acceleration. And this is really the power of what Thomas Stitch was talking about way back when with functional context education. Adult learners are adults with responsibilities and lives that do not allow years of sequential course taking, mastering English and then working on your high school diploma and then doing some developmental education and then maybe getting into a post-secondary education program. IET is an instructional strategy that educators can bring to the career pathway conversation that allows a program to become organized for acceleration. And this does not mean compressed. It does not mean take a 12-week class and offer it in 4 weeks. But it might mean take a 12-week class and now contextualize it with foundational skill building, and maybe it takes 24 weeks. And it's still going to be organized for acceleration for our participants. So CLASP has facilitated a 10-state alliance called the Alliance for Quality Career Pathways since 2013. And leaders, educators, workforce development people, human service professionals across these 10 states developed a way of thinking about career pathway work from 3 perspectives. The first is the career pathway program. And that's the definition we just looked at. It's now really well defined in WIOA and in the Higher Education Act in exactly the same way. And that's not an accident that it showed up that way. That is all of our hard work that got those 7 components written into that law. So we have career pathway programs, and then well-designed career pathway programs intentionally and seamlessly align into pathways, like that example we looked at from International Institute of Minnesota. Multiple programs intentionally designed together, linked together, create pathways. And then programs and pathways, in order to scale them, in order to sustain them, we need career pathway systems. We need the partnerships, we need the policies like co-enrollment and shared intake and assessment, and we need supports, non-academic supports and academic supports. And we also need, honestly, to all be shooting toward the same target. We need a shared performance measurement system. And again, a lot of these things are there for us in WIOA if we know how to turn them on. So WIOA has shared strategic planning, right? It has adult education providers on local boards, and it has these aligned performance metrics. Really a way to let more IET happen, a way for partners to co-invest in integrated education and training in career pathways. So the Alliance framework, when we released that in 2014, just about 1 month before WIOA came out, had a definition of a program, had quality indicators of a system, and it also had a menu of career pathway participant metrics in 3 different categories. Interim outcomes, and interim outcomes are the thing that that really only Title II, only adult education had under WIA, and now is available to all our partners. Education and training outcomes, and labor market outcomes. And if you look at the 6 WIOA performance metrics, the first 5 really fit perfectly inside that construct of we need ways to measure progress while participants are with us, And then we have to have a way to value both education and training outcomes and labor market outcomes. So this first one, measurable skill gain, I would argue is the most powerful and the biggest change for our other WIOA partners, those in workforce development. And so I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about measurable skill gain, because again, kind of like that term accelerate, I think this is a space where adult education really needs to help its partners in the local career pathway system understand what measurable skill gain can mean. So measurable skill gain, again, it's an interim progress measure. You don't have to wait till someone exits your program to take this measure. A person can be with you continuing as a participant, and you can get credit if someone gets a secondary diploma or equivalent. If somebody accumulates credits or Carnegie units on secondary or post-secondary transcript. This one, very familiar to anybody who's been working in the federal funding system for the last 15 years. Educational function level gain, right? Pre-test, post-test, making a gain on a standardized assessment. And then there's progress toward milestones, which really asks for kind of working with employers and determining what are the milestones. It might be apprenticeship standards. It might be just meeting some predetermined milestones set between educators and employers. And then there's one about passing technical or occupational knowledge-based exams. In the Carl Perkins CTE world, this you could say is technical skill attainment. So some sort of knowledge-based exam. Under the the educational function level gain, the Department of Education has redefined EFL or more elaborately enhanced definition of educational function level gain to say yes, the pre-test, post-test, yes, the completion of Carnegie units, which is also like this one over here, and also the program exit and entry into post-secondary education in the program year. So this is that transition to post-secondary. In many states, people who were working to build local partnerships over the last decade between adult education and workforce development or the community college had a lot of frustration, and I would hear things like, well, my workforce people, they only want to work with the highest level students, or workforce only wants to work with people who can get into jobs as soon as possible. Well, I mean, you can understand the perspective of those systems that used to have to work without measurable skill gain. They had no way to take interim progress measures for any of the customers they served in workforce development, unlike adult ed, which has always had, or for 15 years, has had this way to show, at least through pre-test, post-test most of the time, that people were gaining skills. And so we could take a gain and continue working with them. But now under WIOA, we can, all the WIOA titles except Title III, which is for those of you on who are Title III Wagner Pizer, right? You don't do measurable skill gain, but everyone else has measurable skill gain. And we can share this participation-based measure, which will just allow us to put IET models on the ground for more students. I will say there's a caveat to this. Unfortunately, the Department of Education is still thinking about MSG, and while Title II providers will have to do the WIOA quarterly reporting template that includes all MSGs, all measurable skill gains, the National Reporting System, the NRS tables, right now do not have a way to collect these other two MSGs. These slides, I want to say kudos to Anson Green, State Director in Texas, and his team at the Texas Workforce Commission Adult Ed Office, who have really proactively supported adult educators using and collecting all the measurable skill gains in their IET programs. A couple more quick reporting call outs. Again, if you're in the classroom, maybe this one won't mean so much to you, but if you're an administrator of a program, in the national reporting system. Now on table 3, where we always have to put down all of the people that we serve, all the participants, all the people that are with us, at least 12 contact hours, you can see that integrated education and training is a subset under each of the categories. It's under adult basic ed, it's under adult secondary ed, it's under English language acquisition, and it's under the integrated EL civics education. So we will have a way in national data to see how many people are in IET service delivery. There's a new table in the national reporting system, which is going to be counting these achievements for adults in IET programs. And this is where you're going to see over there in column A, you know, the expanded educational function level, the attainment of a high school diploma or equivalent. There's the technical and occupational skills progress, and then the other WIOA metrics about employment and earnings. Okay, so as I wrap up here, I want to leave you with a few ideas. Kind of if your head is spinning or you're thinking about all those different models that I presented earlier in the presentation, do know that you will get a copy of this PowerPoint. It'll be on the COABE website. And I think the first step is really to look at what you do now. Where are you currently providing IET and not really even thinking about it as IET, or something that's very much like IET and could be IET if you just tweaked it a bit in your direct services and in your data. And then I would encourage you to build partnerships, really, because IET has to live within a career pathway program. So it has to have that full 7-part definition to be a career pathway program. And that means having partnerships. It really means working with people who do labor market data, people who run industry sector partnerships. It doesn't mean doing this all yourself. There's no way for an adult education program to run all the components of a career pathway system themselves. It wouldn't be a career pathway system. So what are the partnerships you need to build to be engaging those employers in not a one-by-one way, but in an industry sector model? Where are the partners that you need to work with to really get the stabilization services, the support services that are so critical for success for adult learners? Third, I would really encourage you to find shared target populations with your WIOA Title I, your adult, your youth, especially out-of-school youth, vocational rehabilitation, and really co-enroll. One of the things that has become clear in WIOA regulation and in our performance system is that when we do co-enroll and we have a participant who's both in my adult ed classroom and receiving support services or other career navigation services from my Title I partner, that when that participant makes a measurable skill gain, when they get a job, both of our systems get to claim that, right? We don't have to worry about divvying up who gets credit. We will both get credit. So thinking about co-enrollment, thinking about really relying on your Title I partner to help you do things like job placement, work experience, OJT, on-job training, thinking about things like shared intake, shared assessment. And then I would also encourage you to share what you're doing. I mean, there's so much good work happening across the country, and we just really need to do more making each other aware of it so that we can continue this cycle of learning. So there is an upcoming COABE special edition on career pathways that I have the great honor of being the special issues editor. So if you go to this link, there will be deadlines. Preliminary deadlines are January 1 for submission of manuscripts that will then undergo a peer review process. If you would like me to give you some sort of preliminary feedback, you can submit things by November 15th, again via this link. And that's just an opportunity for us to be in a little conversation and maybe for me to provide some guidance, some feedback prior to submission. Okay, the resources that I promised you. Oh my goodness, Career Pathway and IET resources are just blowing up, and it's great. It's great to see. The Career Pathways Toolkit, this is an enhanced version. The original one came out in 2010, but you know, we've all been learning a lot since then. This is the toolkit and workbook that 12 federal agencies endorse. It features a lot of things from that Alliance for Quality Career Pathway, that 10-state cross-agency group. Things like Alliance Design and braided funding and that metrics menu. So I encourage you to look at that. Penn State has been developing a basic skills curriculum for IET with resources and tools that practitioners can plan and design and implement the basic skills component of IET. World Ed has got some great webinars that have been recorded, 9 different programs from across the country talking about the services that they're doing under WIOA, under IET. And NCTN, also part of World Ed, is about to release a set of profiles of these IET programs, including rural programs, entrepreneurship programs for new arrivals, onboarding college students. The Pathways to Career Network, this is that women employed resource. Again, just amazing lesson plans that are there for anyone to download with both ABE and ASE levels. And the ACES curriculum, I got a shout out to my Minnesota friends who did this terrific job of creating the academic, career, and employability skills curriculum and standing up big professional learning communities there across the state. There's also a free distance learning online course for any instructor to take out of the Minnesota Literacy Council. It really helps programs and instructors think about effective transition skills, building that into instruction at every level of adult education. And Minnesota now uses ACES and the North Star Digital Literacy Standards as part of their adult ed standards. And then finally, I just have to mention the paper, the IET model programs for building career pathways for participants at every skill level, which you can find at the clasp.org website. You can find more information about the programs that are highlighted in this webinar and also other programs for out-of-school youth, programs for correctional education. You can find them there, and you can find me at jmortrude@clasp.org. So thank you, and let's see if we have some questions that we can pull up.
Judy, while you're doing that, I would just like to give Robert, while you're taking the time to look through the questions, I'd like to give Robert the opportunity to say a few more words. Robert, if you're there.
Great.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. Judy, I have to say, you know, they say you couldn't ask for a better setting of the table when you're trying to introduce what you're all about. And I just wanted to share that, you know, the things that I heard were just really amazing, particularly when you think of all that has to be done with what Judy was overviewing. You know, so great that you can actually, you know, leverage technology in such a way, and Burlington English is one great way to do that. As you can see, as I make my way through technology as we stand now. And one of the biggest things that we did was, how can you help your student, you know, long before they even make that IET choice of which particular career is right for them to study? How can you help all those beginning, those intermediate, those advanced ESL learners, you know, make that, take those steps in exploration? And Burlington English steps right in there with a way that your students, again, can have, it's almost like having a simulated career counselor along with them every step of the way, exploring careers and everything that they do, all of the mock resumes, all of the mock college applications, job interview question responses. Everything gets put into a digital portfolio for them in our Career Pathways program. So as far as accountability, whether it's for teachers, for administrators, it's all really done in one place. Then also in that exploration, all the 16 Department of Labor career clusters, they get a chance to explore, and they find jobs that speak to them, so that again, as they're moving toward that decision point for which IET to enter, and they find that career that looks like that would be right for them to study, not only do they make a good decision, but they have all of that background vocabulary and content knowledge. So they don't walk into that IET program cold. And while obviously they know these things in their native language, what happens when I walk into that health science program and I already know blood draw and hemoglobin and dizzy and all those things, so that when I get in there, I'm primed for success. And that's what happens again through the exploration of more than 40 career-specific modules that we have that help them with everything that I've just described. And like I say, you can find all of this at burlingtonenglish.com. And we would love to connect with you and show you how, when the rubber hits the road of everything that we've just heard about, it comes into place. So thank you again for Judy for a great webinar. And I'll turn it back over to Sharon and to Judy now.
Excellent. Thank you, Robert. And again, thank you to Burlington English for their support, which is why this is free to our members. So with saying that, I would like to now turn it back to Judy, because I see we do have a number of questions. So Judy.
Great, thanks. So I'm running through my slides here because I want to get back up to, there are a number of questions about the components of integrated education and training. Does it need to have an industry recognized credential? Does it need to have a WIOA certified credential? Does it need to happen with, oops, sorry, that's me. And really what I would go back to is that this is the definition in the federal legislation. And I think there's a lot of confusion around this term of IET. IET, obviously, the grandfather of integrated education and training is IBEST out of Washington State. And so many people think IET means it has to happen with college credit, has to happen in a college. And while I would say that is a beautiful, wonderful gold standard example of IET, it is not all IET. IET needs to be these three components. They need to be concurrent and contextual. That does not mean they're simultaneous. It does not mean that two people are speaking at the same time. And it doesn't even mean that necessarily some of the regulatory guidance that's come out and that some of the explanations come out is that you may not have all of them always happening at exactly the same time on the calendar. There may be times when people are doing the adult education and literacy while the workforce training isn't happening in those couple of weeks. The important part is that there is an integrated set of outcomes, which means that whomever is delivering this service, if you are doing this in partnership with your workforce center and your community college, if you're doing this in partnership with a construction trades union and a community-based organization, if you are doing this in your adult education program because you have an instructor who's got perhaps the certification to do some kinds of workforce training, there must be an integrated set of outcomes. There must be planning and intentional alignment that this is not just one course and you finish it and then you do the next course and you finish it and then you do the next course, right? So you have to plan this thing together. It has to be designed together. Someone else asked about that WIOA credential. There is, credential is certainly one of the WIOA performance standards. It is not required in an IET in the federal language. If your state has put some other requirements, that could be possible, but it may be that you want to advocate for using, the federal legislation as it was designed, because again, this is, you know, the way this thing got into WIOA is because all of us were doing the hard work out in the field, and it got recognized and transferred into our authorizing language, so that we could use our dollars this way, so we could scale this work, so we could sustain it. Let's see, what other questions am I seeing? Effectiveness in serving employers, Melissa says, was it taken off the board? I think it's still sort of in the collecting idea stage. I've seen some, this is about WIOA performance measure number 6. They are going to try to collect something eventually. I don't think it's fully baked yet. PowerPoint presentation, Sharon, can you again, do people have to go get it, or is it going to show up in their email?
So that will be actually sent to them in their email, but it also will be archived 2 places, on the COAB website and then in our adult educators repository. So it's really accessible.
Great, great. Questions about how realistic some of those models were. Well, what I can tell you is that these are operational models, and they are happening, and we are getting good results out of them. So, I mean, you know your own students, you know your own needs of the people in your community, and maybe a 100-hour prep course won't work for your particular student population, and so you'll have to design that piece a different way. Someone mentions Vessel. Vessel, yes. Again, I've been in the field long enough that I remember Vessel, vocational English as a second language, and Vessel classes, I think, are a really wonderful example of IET, as long as, again, they've been intentionally designed to include all of these things. And I would encourage you to really look at workforce training. I mean, again, we think of number 1 under that workforce training definition as the one that has to happen, right? Occupational skill training, the CTE class, and that's a great, great model. But there are other models. There's on-the-job training. There's incumbent worker training. There are training programs operated by private sector, by unions. There's skill upgrading. There's entrepreneurial training. There's transitional jobs. So if we're working with a population who have very little work experience, you know, that could be the workforce training. So I just really encourage people to get comfortable with the definition and comfortable with sort of advocating for and looking for, again, where you're already doing models that either are IET or are very close to IET, so that when it comes time to report our activities in those national reporting system tables, you know, we can say, yes, I've got students doing IET. I think that's the majority of the questions. Someone's asking about WIOA approved industry recognized credentials. There's a training employment guidance letter from the Department of Labor. I don't remember the number in my head right now. It could be 1015, 1510, 1510. It might be TIGO 1510. That has has a wonderful appendix that talks about industry recognized credentials and credentials in general. But it's not going to list the names of all credentials. It's just going to give you characterization of them. But still, it's a valuable piece to look at. All right, I think I'm done, Sharon.
Judy, fantastic. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your advice and your guidance on this. We know IET is so critical to the field. You know, the webinars you've done on this have been really well attended, so that's why we also appreciate your help spearheading this for our journal as well, with the articles that we'll be accepting. So I just want to remind everybody that Judy had put out there that we're looking for articles specifically on this topic. And if you'd like her input, you can send them to her by November 15th. Otherwise, they're due by January 1st, I believe. So with all of that, thank you again, Judy. Thank you again, Robert with Burlington English, and everybody else. Thank you for taking the time to join us. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Happy fall.
Bye now.